From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. We have a lot to discuss, an important topic, certainly a big news night. But we are talking with the lead immigration attorney with the Legal Aid Society. We're talking about understanding juvenile legal rights and certainly immigrant legal rights. And I want to bring in our guest via Zoom, Chay Sengkhounmany. Did I say that right, Chay?
You did. You did.
Thank goodness. Chay Sengkhounmany. She is, again, the lead immigration attorney with the Legal Aid Society. And so let me just ask you, how would you describe your job? Your job is what?
So I lead the Survivors Immigrant Legal Project of Legal Aid Society, and we essentially provide legal services to survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. And so that also includes child abuse and domestic abuse of children.
And this is in a large area, right? So it's not just Davidson County.
Yes, so Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and the Cumberlands covers 48 counties within the middle of Tennessee. And so it spans from Clarksville all the way to Oak Ridge. And so my unit has jurisdiction essentially over 48 counties.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been practicing law since 2003. I've been working in nonprofits, specifically the immigration, since 2004.
And what are we seeing here in Middle Tennessee? What do you think people don't realize, they need to realize? What are you seeing on a daily basis here in Middle Tennessee?
So I see child abuse. I see a lot of domestic violence situations, U.S. citizen spouses, legal permanent residents, bringing over foreign nationals to marry and then using their power and control structure to power control over the immigration process to keep the spouse in an abusive relationship. I see human trafficking happening, not only in labor situations, but also commercial sex situations. And then I'm also seeing children in foster care who have been abused or abandoned and neglected by their parents. They have been put in unsafe situations, so now they're under DCF's custody. Really a lot of tragic situations, but the great thing about my job is that I can be part of the stepping stone of my clients gaining stability, independence, a way to get out of abusive situations.
Let's take each one of those individually. Let's start with someone marries someone. I guess they bring someone over from another country. So that, let's say it's a husband brings over a wife. The husband is a citizen, the wife is not, and then it becomes an abusive relationship. How common is that? Is that a common situation? And obviously all the power in that situation is with the spouse who is a citizen here in the United States. Is that right?
That is correct. I, of course, think it's common because that's the work that I do. But I think in the big picture, the big scheme is that it is fairly common. Tennessee ranks 6th in domestic violence, murders 5th or 6th. It varies year to year. So domestic violence is a huge problem, not only in Tennessee, but nationally. And so when you add the element of immigration, that is another element of control. So domestic violence is about power and control, and the typical marriage immigration process requires that the U.S. citizen spouse or the legal permanent resident spouse petition for the foreign national. So that spouse can withdraw that petition at any point up to the time that they actually get the green card. And actually, if the marriage is less than 2 years old, they still have control of the process because they have to go back to immigration and remove conditions that are put on the green card that they get. But it is, abusive spouses will use that to demand things, whether it's, favors or things to keep them in that relationship, create an element of fear. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to call immigration on you. I'm going to get custody of the children because you don't have status here. But at the end of the day, the non-citizen status is entirely reliant on the U.S. citizen spouse.
Wow. And all right, how does that start generally? I mean, is it that the spouse, the U.S. citizen, is seeking someone that they can control, or do they meet normally and then it comes into that situation? I mean, how does that situation begin?
I think that there's a variety of situations. Some marriages they were high school sweethearts and they've met, and then it blooms into an abusive relationship, and then long time relationships that bloom into that. And it could be a 20-year relationship and the U.S. citizen spouse just refuses to file the petition, or files the petition, withdraws it, and never follows through with the process. Another situation that I often see is people meeting online. There's a lot of non-truths that you can tell online, and people paint these great pictures of marriages and relationships, and when they go through the process and bring the non-citizen spouse over, things change, and reality hits, and they not only become abusive, they have already been abusive. And they're also serial serial people who marry foreign nationals. And there's actually a law put into place that requires people who petition for fiancés to disclose information, whether they have violated border protection or have been through the court process for domestic violence.
That whole situation seems ripe for abuse, frankly. And yeah, you throw in the internet and you throw in a situation where someone is claiming to be something they may not be, but the fact of the matter is they could help them get citizenship. They could bring them to this country with the promise of citizenship. That seems like a situation where someone could take advantage of someone pretty quickly. And is that,
yes.
Do you see that a lot? I mean, that sounds like something I would see on a Lifetime movie or something, but are you saying this happens a lot, or how common is that?
It is fairly common, so common that Congress ended up having to pass a law to address that issue. The Violence Against Women's Act has a very specific form of relief for victims of domestic violence to be able to petition on their own without the abusive spouse knowing at all. They can stay in that, they can remain married, because the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they leave. And so they may not feel that they're safe enough to be able to let the spouse know that they're filing on their own, so they don't need to tell the spouse at all.
What law would you like to see changed? I mean, you do this work. What needs to be changed, in your opinion? What specifically in Tennessee or even nationally? What would you like to see changed?
I think right now it would be the processing times. So it's taking 2 years. So getting a green card, whether it's through a spouse or through a family petition, takes about 2 or 3 years. So in the meantime, there may not be other options in between. So the individual may not have access to a work permit while they're waiting.
So if you don't mind, let me take a step back. Walk me through this process. What do you mean it takes 2 years to get a green card? So are you saying that maybe they meet online and then they come over here and they marry and it takes 2 years? I guess, walk me, what do you mean it takes 2 years to get a green card? Are they already here, or this is somebody who's coming over, or what's happening?
It depends. So you can file here. It's called adjustment of status, or you can file abroad. So getting a green card is a 2-step process. First, you must have a qualifying relationship or circumstance. So that would be the marriage to a U.S. citizen or a marriage to a legal permanent resident. And oftentimes people are able to prove that fairly easily. It's a bona fide marriage. The second step is the actual green card process. And if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can do those processes together concurrently. And if you are outside of the U.S., well, if you're inside the U.S., you can do it concurrently. If you're outside of the U.S., you have to wait for the first step to be approved, and then that will be transferred over to a consulate in the home country, and then the foreign national will interview and come. So actually, for consular processing, it's going to be well over 2 years.
Well over 2 years.
Yes.
And is this what we're talking about? Often they meet online, and it's maybe a woman, and they're promised they get married, and I guess they're at that point married, and she is marrying in part. I don't know. Maybe they're in love, but maybe it's about citizenship. I mean, how much of it is about citizenship and this whole thing? I mean, what's happening there?
So the process to get a marriage petition approved is you have to show that it's a bona fide marriage, meaning that it's not solely for immigration purposes. And immigration marriage fraud has stiff penalties. Of course, people do it and some get away with it, but it's 5 to 10 year imprisonment if you are caught, and then the U.S. citizen individual can be barred from petitioning anyone else. But it is a vigorous process that, when I file marriage petitions, and when I was in private practice, I did the marriage petitions, and my packages, the application package could be anywhere from 100 pages to 200 pages to prove that the marriage is bona fide. Wow.
And do you feel like most marriages are bona fide, or do you think there is a problem still?
The ones that I see are bona fide marriages. Oftentimes it's, they started off in a relationship and it has gone downhill. There are elements of domestic violence. I think there are also fraudulent marriages. And sometimes, you work on a case and you learn some facts that make you question whether the marriage was actually valid.
Right.
But, people have varying reasons to get married, and the law is specific in that it was not solely for immigration purposes.
So we go all over probably the 48 counties that you represent. So there might be somebody out there watching. What would you recommend if there is somebody out there watching that believes they need help? What situation do you think they might find themselves in at this moment? Kind of talk us through that, and what should that person do?
Yeah, so if you are in a marriage and you are waiting for your spouse to file the paperwork for immigration status, and you are staying in that relationship because you're afraid that if you leave, you won't have a pathway for immigration status, know that there are forms of relief that are available, and a Legal Aid Society can help with that. We provide immigration legal services to domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims and human trafficking victims who are low income. So our grant specifically is tailored to that type of relief. So if you find yourself in that situation, call our 1-800 number to get access, and somebody will call you back to do an intake and do a full assessment. So the 1-800 number is 800-238-1443. And you'll be routed to the closest office to your area.
Very good. Okay, that's fascinating. All right, that's just part one of this. I also want to ask about human trafficking and some of the other things you talked about. But we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there is the number. Actually, that's the number for more information. But the number to call us is 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. If you have a question or comment, please give us a call. We will take a break. Be back right after this.